All right, welcome back to the Pass and Screen Away podcast, brought to you by Pop the Trunk Sports, our second episode, the Windover edition. We're going to start it off by getting into some of our daily leagues, how we ended on the first episode. You get to pick all your lineup, you got X amount of money, and I haven't had a chance to do any this year. Well, actually, I did one the first night. It was like a 4-game night, and I picked Harden, Anthony Davis, and then everyone else dudded out on me, and I got 12 out of 20. And I was pretty pissed about it, actually. Yeah. And then I haven't got into another one, but I know we still have some success from Rocky over here, who's been dominating on Draft Streets, but now we're on Draft Kings.
I don't know about dominating, but
hey, if you're cashing tickets, you're doing well, you know.
Cashing tickets.
What kind of ways do you look at your lineups, Rocky? Are you a superstar guy? Do you kind of put it together as far as just best value on the board?
I always try to find a value bargain guy first to kind of build around. If you can do that, it always makes things a little bit easier to fit the superstars into your lineup. And it kind of just depends on the league. Like I talked with Rory earlier, is 50-50 or the cash games. I make sure I kind of find guys that are, nothing's a for sure deal, but guys that are pretty consistent. If you play tournaments, the bigger ones, I kind of look for guys with upside. So, you know, it's kind of like comparing, would you take a cash game, I'd probably take a guy like Chris Bosh. A tournament game, I'd probably look at a guy like Drummond that has more upside, but can bust on you a little bit easier too. So
yeah.
And by cash game, you mean like just
50-50s.
Okay. Well, that you just doubling up your money on like 20 people, right?
Right.
For those of you who don't know, the 50-50 is if you get in the top 50% of the entries, you just cash out, and everyone wins the same amount of money, the top 20. So for instance, if it's a league with 40 teams in it, the top 20 teams all cash the same. So for example, DraftKings, you cash out, or you spend $5 to bet, you cash out at $9. If you don't get in the top 20, you get nothing. So, and then Rocky, you were saying earlier that the 50-50 games, if you can reach a certain amount of points every week, you feel good about, or excuse me, every day, you feel good about where you're going to place and consistently land in that top 50.
Right. 280, I think that's kind of the number that if you got to that point, you'd cash out, the majority of the time, unless it was a really, really huge night on everybody's part.
Yeah.
And it just depends on the day. Sometimes it's lower and sometimes it's higher, but I think 280 would make you a consistent winner in the 50-50s.
Mm-hmm.
The tournament plays, 280 is probably going to win you your money back, maybe even make you a little bit of money, but it's definitely not going to probably win you a tournament on that.
I see. So Rocky, as far as your history with the DraftKings or even just doing the daily leagues, I'm fairly new to it, so I'm learning a lot. But what would you a couple of tips you might give a beginner?
Probably, like I said, find value, guys. Twitter's your best friend when it comes to daily fantasy. The downfall in daily fantasy is probably you have to be on your phone or by a computer when lineups are set to lock at 5 o'clock. DraftKings actually allows you to go back on the later games and switch guys out if there's a late scratch. But at 5 o'clock, you kind of have to be somewhere where you can look and see if there's any late scratches or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're able to do that, you can get a lot of value plays, last-minute guys that are sick or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, if you can find a point guard that's starting that night because there's a scratch, it's kind of like the Donald Sloan has been doing for Indiana Pacers. I think he started out at $3,500 on DraftKings, which is a bargain.
Right.
Basketball is one of the few sports. Football, you could get Adrian Peterson when he went down. Doesn't mean that the next running back's going to actually produce anything. Basketball, if a guy gets 36, 40 minutes a night, he's going to put up some sort of stats for you.
Right.
I mean, that's just, especially where we talk DraftKings, they don't dock you. It's not an efficiency website, so it's not about missed field goals or anything like that. A starting point guard that gets 40 minutes is going to give you a good value on $3,500 what you have to buy him at. So.
Yeah, Sloan's been surprising. Have you guys seen Sloan?
He's had some great lines. He's starting to creep up, though. I think he's at 6,000 today or something like that.
Yeah, he's pretty high today.
So they're on it pretty quick. You say you get a couple good games of value, and then they're on it pretty quick and adjusted.
Perry Jones made a lot of people money the other night.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's the thing too is they jump fairly quick, but a new guy's popping up like that every week, every day if not, the same. Like today, for instance, I picked up Taj Gibson at like 10 minutes before the lineup's locked, because as soon as I got that team stream with Joakim Noah out, I was like, boom, go grab Gibson, So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the biggest bit of advice I could give anybody is just like you said with the Taj Gibson. If you're paying attention to what's going on in the NBA, and you've kind of read through your Twitter or your Roto Worlds and that kind of stuff, you're going to find guys pretty frequently that can help your lineup out, that can free up the cap space to maybe get you Blake Griffin or LeBron tonight or something like that.
Right. The guarantees.
Right.
Because that's what I was trying to take your advice today when I was picking, lineups. You like mentioned a few guys like Patrick Patterson, who's going to play tonight, and who's dudding out so far, but that's okay.
Right.
But then you go from there, and I try to like balance that with like guarantee guys who seemed affordable, like a Rajon Rondo or even Chris Paul. I think he was in the top 10, but he was, not ranked as far as cost wise in the top 5, and he's one of the most consistent players in the NBA. So I always feel pretty good about putting money on him.
Right. I mean, that's the thing is, it's always nice to have a few studs in your lineup that you can rely on. Because, like I said, if you get a Patrick Patterson or even a Donald Sloan who's at $3,500, if he busts out on you, you didn't use too much of your cap space on him. So, there's a chance that Chris Paul may go for a triple-double tonight and bail you out of that.
Right.
Whereas the other way around, if you spend $7,000 on a guy and he busts out, or $8,000 on a guy and he busts out, your team's pretty much done for that night, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
And so, probably the other thing I could suggest is just watching matchups. We kind of talked earlier, the Vucevic deal. I think sometimes we overthink that, he's on the back-to-back and stuff, but at the end of the day, he's playing the Sixers.
Right, totally.
I think that's the biggest thing is I've seen guys in 24 minutes last year. I remember watching Westbrook in like 24 minutes get a triple-double.
Yeah.
And so there's always, and most of the people are pretty alert to those things. The Sixers are just bad. So they have a lot of guys tonight. A lot of people have a lot of Magic players tonight.
Yep. And for instance, Vuk right now has 12 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist with 2.5 left in the second quarter.
Yeah.
So he's already putting up a solid line.
And Vuk's just started out strong this year. He's had a great season so far.
Yeah, he's been a monster this season.
Is that something everyone sees to continue? Do you see him hitting a nudge and kind of just being a low double-double guy, or you see Vucevic as a guy who's still improving and is only going to just keep getting better?
I think it's one of those things where as long as he stays healthy, that's the big key with everybody. I think he's been dinged up the last couple of years, off and on, all season long. But if he stays healthy, he's pretty much proven that he's a double-double. Mm-hmm. And so I think as long as he stays healthy, he's going to keep improving, and he's going to be just a legit fantasy player.
Yeah. Well, he's got great percentages. He gets about, not a huge shot blocker, but he'll get you over 1. And then, last night in a clutch situation, I saw him hit a 3, and he stroked it too. It wasn't like weak or anything. It was like, ooh, nice. Like, Vuk, you got nice range, man. So, and Vuk I trust for sure. Especially as a young player, I think we forget that too. It's like those guys are in the gym all summer long getting better, and then they come out and they surprise people. It's kind of like another guy who CH I know you had on your list as far as buy or sell guys was MKG. And it's like I watched him play, and he looked like a completely different player than he did last year. As far as just confidence level, it wasn't even just the J, too. He was just like relentlessly attacking, getting to the basket, getting rebounds, blocking shots. I was like, dude, who is this guy? So.
And then them playing with Lance and Kimba, they get the ball, and Lance, he just takes off on a full-out sprint.
Mm-hmm.
And that's MKG's strength, is just getting out in transition. And that jumper hopefully just continues to get better, because his free throw shot last year was absolutely awful. You look at that, and you had to turn away a little bit. It was so bad.
Have you seen him play yet?
I have seen him play, and he's looked much improved.
Yeah, his J is completely rebuilt. Like, it's not just a fake rebuild. It was like legitimate. His elbows in, his feet are pointed straight. He fixed a lot of things.
So is that something you see him continuing to just add to his game? He's just going to be one of those guys who's going to continue to add that to his game? Or is that jumper pretty much at its peak? mid-range J.
No, I mean I watched him take a off the dribble sidestep, off a screen, just pop and drop it right there, and just bust it. I was like, oh my god, like MKG, excuse me, like I was just shocked. But then from the free throw line too, I think he's hit almost 80% of his free throw attempts, and he's so aggressive that he's going to go probably 4 to 5 times a game. So if he can, improve upon that from going from a negative free throw guy to a positive free throw guy, I mean that'd be huge for his fantasy value.
And so let's just get right into our next stuff at the buy or sell moments. And, you can add this to your daily leagues or just your normal teams as well. The waiver wire additions, hot players, guys through injuries, what have you. And so let's just start out with MKG. We talked about him a little bit. Is he someone that he's a must add right now if you need a small forward?
I think so. Yes.
Depending how deep the league, I think 12-man leagues, yes. Anything lower, I don't know. Small forward's a pretty thin position, so that helps his value a lot.
Yeah, also, too, the fact that they really don't have anyone on the team that's really going to push him for minutes, so you got that going for you. I know Gerald Henderson, when he comes in, can play the 2 or the 3 in spurts. So really, because you have that going for you, I would say that you'd be worth it for sure in a 12-team or bigger, but I would say you're kind of throwing the dice a little bit on a 10-team or less.
Definitely. And if you're in a daily league matchup and it's a thin small forward night, is MKG a guy who's worth the value that you have to pay for him? What's he cost about right now?
I don't know.
Is he in that like 5,000 to 6,000 range?
I think so.
I mean, I know he's hurt right now too, so.
Yeah, I didn't even pay attention to him today, but I'm guessing he's probably somewhere between 47 to 5. I think on that, it just kind of depends on who else is going that night. When you have LeBron and Carmelo and a bunch of guys going, I don't know that he's worth it there because the value you're losing between those guys is huge. But, on a smaller night, he very well may be worth the look on it.
Yeah, you definitely just got to go off matchups with him because, like Rocky said, even the 2 players that he brought up, like if he's playing against those 2 players, or really essentially any wing that can score, those are probably the nights where you're going to want to stay away from him. But there will be some matchups out there that you can exploit where, he's playing against.
Unless it's Mike Dunleavy. Did you see what Mike Dunleavy did to LeBron the other night? He almost triple-doubled on him.
Yeah, I saw that.
I was like, oh my God, Dunleavy. He shows up for the big games.
Dunleavy has that in him, though, man.
He does.
Every year he has this run of games where it's insane.
How old's Dunleavy?
Man. I don't know. He played with Jay Williams in 2001.
And Battier, yeah, and Boozer.
And he's the one still playing. Yeah. Well, Boozer's still out there.
Is Boozer
looking
playing?
Bad right now.
He looks like a ghost out there. The fact that Boozer's not putting up numbers in LA is ridiculous.
Yeah, he's 34.
34, Dunleavy. Wow. All right, let's get into our next player here. Let's go to Chicago. Backup point guard Aaron Brooks.
I mean, I don't buy Aaron Brooks unless in a situation like they're in now. He's actually looked really good when he's played, but the thing about it is that, Derrick Rose rolled his ankle and all of a sudden he's had 2 good games, and Derrick Rose is set up for 2 good games. So I think Derrick Rose dominates that position there. But, I mean, he's actually looked really good even as a backup to Derrick Rose. But as far as like a keeper, no. But as a waiver wire guy on a Derrick Rose injury, absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, he's got a pretty good skill set in terms of fantasy is concerned. He definitely provides quite a bit for a flyer that you could take, like Rory said, on situations there. That's really key with him.
Looks like TK's breaking up a little bit. Let's just keep going.
For me, he's probably a sell unless Derrick Rose goes down for good.
Yeah.
In a season-long league, I think he has a pretty negative effect on your field goal percentage. He can do some nice things, but he's also playing for Thibodeau, which I don't know how well that meshes with his game.
Yeah.
If you need threes, for sure. If you need a few dimes, possibly if he's getting enough run, that'd be all right. But it's not a guy that I'm like itching to add to my lineups or anything.
Definitely.
Do you think there's any way that he could be like DJ Augustine last year was for them?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think DJ Augustine's really underrated, to be honest with you. I thought he had a great college career, and in the pros he struggled. He doesn't defend well, but as like the 6-man type role, I think he's really, really effective in that role, as he's kind of shown in Detroit this year.
Yeah, he's actually been. I drafted Brandon Jennings in like the 6th or 7th round in my fantasy, one of my fantasy drafts, and I'm really regretting it now that I see Augustine play, because you can tell Stan Van likes Augustine better, but of course Jennings has the big contract, and so he's got this decision to make every night, like who he's going to play, and he's been doing this thing where he plays Jennings for basically the first quarter, and then plays Augustine the entire second quarter, so he's basically closing the games for them. So it's been kind of scary as a Jennings owner to watch Augustine come over and just continue to do what he did last year in Chicago.
So is Augustine the guy that you would pick up then, being a Jennings owner? Is he kind of a guy you would...
In fact,
if you have Jennings, go out and get Augustine. I know obviously as a filter, Augustine's a guy, if you need dimes or threes, who can give you that.
Points
but,
too.
on a nightly basis, is he going to get you the minutes consistently? But it looks like Stan Van really likes him, but is he a guy that you would, keep an eye on or add into your daily leagues too?
Yeah, daily leagues, I don't know. What do you think, Rocky?
Daily leagues, that's to me kind of one of those, we talked about tournament plays.
Yeah.
There's a lot of upside with them. He could have a night where he may get 30 minutes, like you said, and Van Gundy just lets him ride it out.
Mm-hmm.
But I never like putting guys that are in some sort of timeshare in my cash games or 50-50 games, because he may only get 15, 18 minutes if Brandon Jennings has the hot hand.
Right.
And so that's kind of, to me, another one, because of the reasons I just stated, his price is always going to be fairly low. So like a big tournament, I think he's definitely somebody that you look hard at for, like, I think $4,800 right around there is where he's at right now on DraftKings.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah.
All right, let's get into our next player here. A guy, Amare Stoudemire, in the offseason taking those wine baths, helping him out. He at least seems to have a little more mojo back from what he's had in the past. Obviously, he can never play a lot of minutes, but at a power forward spot, is he a guy you're buying or selling right now?
I don't know. TK, you take this one, man.
I'm selling. I know, like, kind of what CH was starting to get into is they don't have a lot of depth there, but I think it's more likely he gets traded at some point just for them to clear up cap space, but or just use him as a tool to try and bring someone in, possibly.
Isn't he the largest expiring in the league right now? Pretty sure.
Probably.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if he didn't have.
I think he's top 3 paid along there with Kobe and Joe Johnson. I think he's the
Isn't he around like 25 plus a year?
That's insane. Between him and Bargnani, they're like, these guys are making McDonald's.
I mean, that's like $36 million right there in two players.
Yeah.
I don't mind Amare. I don't know if I'd add him to my team, but he doesn't hurt you in the percentages, that's for sure. He's good in both. If he's getting consistent enough run, if your team can weather, the DNP every few games when he sits out on a back-to-back or something, I don't think he's somebody that hurts your team. So in a deeper league, I think he's fine. I don't think he's somebody that's going to win you a league or anything by, like, picking up on the waiver wire.
Mm-hmm.
And Amare just has a tendency to, one small knee injury leads to about a month off. And, that hopefully that's something that he can just avoid. But it just haunts him, and, I mean, those knees aren't getting any better. But at least he's started off the season well, and hopefully he can stay on the court for as long as possible for the Knicks so they can trade him, like TK said. I mean,
trade him.
Big expiring deal. There's a lot of teams looking to dump, especially midway through the year, and you never know. The Knicks are definitely, with Phil Jackson, looking to improve that awful roster.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Bargnani, too. Maybe you can move one of those two guys would be a great scenario for Phil Jackson.
I heard they want to move J.R. Smith, too.
And throw in, the enigma J.R. Smith.
Right. Well, I heard that Indiana was looking at him, trying to figure out to trade. It's like, do they like every enigmatic, like, two-guard in the league? They
it was for Chris Copeland, too?
Yeah.
Didn't he go down that road already?
I know. It's like,
that would be the worst trade if they go and there's no reason why they should do that, because they're not going to contend, so I don't get why they want to go and add a player that's got to steal 2 more years on his contract after this year.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
And you could argue Copeland is more effective than J.R. Smith anyway.
Copeland's had a decent start off the bench this year for them. He's been like a bright spot.
Yeah, he's definitely been a value guy on DraftKings this year. Copeland has.
What's his value out on DraftKings?
I think it's starting to sneak up. It's probably like at 45 now, but he was a minimum guy. He was 3,000 for a couple, or the first week or so.
Mm-hmm. He had a couple 20-point games already. He's hit a lot of threes. He's hit a lot of threes. Chris Copeland, the legend.
Copeland getting some serious running. And is he a guy, we'll just get into Chris Copeland for by ourselves. Is he a guy, you need some threes, you plug him in, he's getting some burn there. CJ Miles has been struggling.
God. I picked up CJ last night. He went 0 for 8. And it was like, when you pick up those waiver wire guys and they hit you like that on your FG, it makes you want to just... Did you just hate him for like a week or two? Like it was kind of like Patrick Patterson, like you were talking earlier. Like he burned me on Sunday, so he's gonna sit in timeout for about a week or two before I pick him up again. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I don't think I would go and get him. I mean, possibly maybe with the next game or two, but once David West comes back, once George Hill comes back, I know Stuckey's just starting to get incorporated back into that. Just essentially guys that could take some touches away from him. That's really the only reason why he's producing, because somebody's got to score. It reminds me a lot of like the Perry Jones situation. It's just a spot where someone's going to have to take some shots. So I think that's really the only reason why he's thriving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the dude can get buckets, that's for sure. And he's not afraid to shoot, that's for sure too. But I think TK hit it on the head. It's the basketball season's just like, it's a long grind, and when there's injuries and stuff like that, his role is to get buckets off the bench. And so right now, I don't think Chris Copeland's a bad ad. If you have a season-long league where your transactions are limited, then I probably wouldn't add him. But if it's unlimited transactions, I'd add him and just drop him next week when David West gets back type deal.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of people hurt in Indiana, and that's why like Sloan and Copeland are getting minutes. I totally agree with you guys.
And what about and Ed Davis? Guys getting some extra burn now because of the injuries, and just an awful team defensively. Mm-hmm. And he can come in there and has shown signs, at least on the defensive end. Is he a guy you want to pick up?
Yeah, I've picked up Ed Davis once already, and it's amazing what he's doing in limited minutes. He's kind of reminding me of like a kind of Brandon Wright kind of player, where he's really efficient. He comes in, he blocks a couple shots, he shoots effectively, but hopefully with a lot higher ceiling than a Brandon Wright. But yeah, Ed Davis, I picked him up. I wanted to keep him, but then he kind of laid an egg for me. But even last night, I think he had like 21 minutes, and he put up like 13 and 6 and like a couple blocks. And it's like off the waiver wire, like if you're going for blocks and some efficiency, like he's a pretty good guy to look at.
I'd grab him. I like Ed Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Every time he had a chance to play in Toronto, he killed it when he was starting up there. He had a lot of like 2010 games.
Yeah, that was his rookie year, right?
Yeah, and I think his second year too, when Bargnani was hurt, of course, and all those guys. He had a run where he's starting, putting up some pretty solid numbers, and I think he's a talented guy. I don't know why the Lakers were able to get him for like 2 years, $2 million.
Yeah, an incredible value. He's like one of our best players.
Yeah, that's a great signing for the Lakers. Obviously, they need about 10 more great signings to be good. but
you're not liking that Jordan Hill 11 million pop?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
We had to pay somebody. Right?
I don't know I don't think there's a big difference between Jordan Hill and Ed Davis. I know Jordan Hill's a little bit bigger, guard guys in the post, but I mean it's not a $10 million difference a year.
No.
No, really the only difference is just at least lately Jordan Hill's been hitting his mid-range shot. That's really the only difference between the two, because other than that, they're very similar.
Mm-hmm. Seems like Ed Davis, though, he comes off the bench and he's like, I don't want to say angry, but like he seems ready to go. Like I've watched the Lakers 4 times now, and I'm really ashamed to say it because they're so bad, but I've liked Ed Davis off the bench. He seemed like one of their most like consistent players, because everyone else is like either showing up or not showing up, including Jordan Hill, and especially like a Jeremy Lin. Boozer's been non-existent a couple times, so it's been interesting to see how. I think by the end of the year, if the coach is smart, which we're still not sure if he is, Ed Davis will, I think, move into that starting lineup or definitely like carve out 28 minutes a night.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head there. I think in time he's definitely going to be a player that's close to 100% owned, just because I'm going to predict that Carlos Boozer gets bought out by the time the end of the season,
Ooh, I like that.
End of the fantasy season, and Boozer will just tag on to some sort of contender or something.
I like that because Boozer is such a he's so frustrating to watch. He plays zero defense, like zero. And that's the thing about Ed Davis is our team is, or I don't want to say our team, but the Lakers are so bad defensively, and like we need a little injection of defense, and Ed Davis is a huge upgrade Huge upgrade over Boozer. It's the same thing that happened to him last year in Chicago. Taj Gibson just took all his minutes because it's like there's 2 ends to the floor.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think he's going to carve out a bigger role as the season goes on. Boozer pisses everybody off everywhere he goes, and the Lakers are they're historically bad for that franchise. I thought they were bad last year. I think they might be worse this year.
They are. They're way worse.
Yep.
And to me, it's one of those things where why not play him? You know, like I said, Boozer, they haven't really invested anything into him. And if he's not going to play any D, I don't think Byron Scott's going to have any problem sitting him down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you guys see the Lakers keeping their draft pick this year? I know if they don't get in the top 5, Phoenix gets their pick from the Steve Nash trade. Do you see the Lakers just continuing to struggle?
Mm-hmm.
They're a lock.
Yeah, they're a lock.
To finish in the bottom 5. They've been the worst team for me to watch this season.
Yeah.
Worse than the Sixers for me.
Ooh.
They're better. They're better than the Sixers, don't get me wrong, but I mean, the Sixers are trying to be bad.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know about the Lakers.
The Lakers are faking it.
Mediocre, and they're awful.
They're not good at being mediocre.
It's like a ninja sneak attack, like tank job. Like they're trying to okay, we're signing Kobe. We think we can be legit. It's like no.
So is this the worst team that Kobe's ever played with?
Yes.
Man, I think it is.
Yeah.
Better than the Smush Parker.
But he had Lamar then. You know, he had Lamar Odom. So there's not even close to a player who the second best player on our team is close to as good as Lamar Odom was. And so, and those teams had a couple other players too. They have Devin George. Who else do they have? The invincible Chris Mim.
Chris Mim,
a lot of
lottery pick.
Kwame Brown.
No hands, Kwame.
Yeah, so...
I need to name some guys, though, and I'm looking at their roster. Wesley Johnson, I mean, he's been like a castaway everywhere he's went.
Yep.
They got... Jeremy Lin has been super disappointing to me. I mean,
He has.
talk about gift wrapping a starting point guard spot to him, and he's been able to do nothing with it.
Yep.
They just have a lot of guys that shouldn't even be in the league, like Ronnie Price. We brought up him. Even Sacre, Wesley Johnson. Like, these guys would be either 12th man or not even in the league. So... Yeah. That just shows, really where the state of where they're at currently.
Well, and Ronnie Price has looked better than Jeremy Lin in some stints.
He plays D.
Yeah, he plays real defense.
I think when Nick Young comes back, I'm not a big Nick Young fan, but I think he's going to be able to shoot them into some wins.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
You get him and Kobe on the court, they're able to have
60 shots
power.
between the two of them.
Yeah, it's going to be ridiculous watching those two gun. But I think there's a chance they could win some games because of that. Not very many, but they're going to be a little bit better when he gets back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me and my dad actually had this talk. He kind of laughed in my face when I told him once they get back, I think he could shoot him into a couple wins.
Oh, for sure. He can score. Nick Young can score with the best of them. And so last year in D'Antoni's system that, it produces superstars that shouldn't be superstars. Nick Young was fantastic, and if Byron Scott gives him the green light again, maybe he's going to have nights where he scores upper 20s, 30 points a couple times.
Yep.
Do you see the Lakers trying to make a trade, make any moves at all?
No.
Are they just going to stay with this team, tank, get that 5th pick?
Yeah, they just don't have any assets. They really don't. Say a guy like Ed Davis could have been tradable, but for $1 million, why trade him when you could just keep him for that?
Right. It's like a value
They don't
contract.
have anything that they can really go out and get or trade and get something back. So they're just kind of in a shitty spot.
Yeah, I like TK. I don't think they would make a move, but like TK said, I don't even think they can make a move. I mean, Kobe's handcuffed them with his contract. So I don't think there's any moves in their horizon.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of teams are you guys watching on your league passes right now? Is there a specific team? Do you guys basing it kind of on guys that you're looking to pick up? Or you kind of like certain players and just end up catching a lot of Golden State games or Blazer games or anything like that?
The two teams I've watched every game of so far have been the Pelicans and the Kings. Those two seem to be the two I tend to, for some reason, end up watching.
I'm glad you brought up the Kings, TK, because everyone's talking crap, saying, hey, making fun of the owner for thinking they're going to be good, and they've come out and they've been very competitive, played pretty solid defense, and Rudy and Cousins both look like studs right now, as far as the way they're putting the ball in the hoop and actually sharing the ball together.
And hey, Collison stepped up real nice.
Collison looks good.
No, I know we had this argument earlier with TK, and he was all over this, like Collison defensively, just kind of fits the way they play. And hey, Isaiah's played well out in Phoenix too, so he's still doing his thing. But
Collison's been
looks like Collison's just fit in, really well. And they're 3-1. They beat Portland, the Clippers, and a pretty bad Denver team right now. But say 3-1 in the West, you take it.
Especially against Portland and the Clippers. Those are two of the top, probably 6 teams in the West.
Is Sacramento a playoff team? Are they a team that just kind of hangs around that 9-8 spot all year?
No.
I think they fade, yeah. I think the way they've played, they could maybe make a run at it, but I think if they do, they're one of those teams that fades, after the All-Star break, they kind of fade out.
Yeah. I like what I'm seeing, and Boogie Cousins is one of my favorite players, but I think they have no chance to really make an 8 seed, because I think honestly the top 8 teams in the West are pretty cut and dry already. There's those, the Phoenix from last year, or some other teams coming up like the Pelicans, but I just don't know how any of those teams can squeeze into that top 8 with a stronger Dallas. Houston's showing that they're still really good. There's just a lot of talent in the West. It's hard to sneak in the top 8.
I think they're a trade away. I think if they went out and got a guy, say, like David West, I think that's a guy where they could potentially compete for that 8, 7 seed. So I think they're a trade away, and they don't really have a ton of assets. They got a bunch of sucker guys like Jason Thompson, Derek Williams, guys that you don't have any value currently. So, if they could go out and find a way to make a move in some way, maybe we could start,
So is there any trade scenarios you see happening before the trade deadlines for Sacramento or any team at all?
Rondo to LA.
I've got some trades written down here. I want to see what you guys think about any of these.
Okay.
So let's start with the first one. I got JaVale McGee to the Miami Heat, and Denver would receive cash in a 2015 second round.
Okay.
So essentially, Denver is just, conceding the fact that they signed him to a horrific contract. And I know it was Ujiri who signed him, and he's not currently there. He's currently in Toronto. So it wasn't the current GM's fault in that regard. But, for the amount of money that they're playing, he's only able to play 20 minutes, with his asthma up there in Denver. So it's essentially them just kind of punting and conceding the fact that they just want to get him off the roster.
I would like to see that, actually. Denver's, they got, Mozgov there. They drafted a rookie center as well who's getting some minutes. And, JaVale McGee just hasn't worked out over there, and the contract's just awful. So if you can at all, get something from him, I think you take it. And if you're Miami, it gives you a shot blocker next to Chris Bosh. Birdman's had success in that, just being able to run around and block shots there. So, I could see him carving out a nice role in Miami.
Mm-hmm. What's the other trade you got, TK?
Let's see. So I got a 3-team deal here where the Clippers would get Jeff Green, Oklahoma City would get J.J. Redick, and Boston would get a 2015 first-round lottery protected from the Thunder.
I like that for the Thunder, man. They need some depth, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, and a great knockdown shooter like a J.J. Redick next to 2 just like dynamic scorers like Westbrook and Durant. And then you got Morrow on the other side, and then Ibaka down low. That'd be pretty deadly.
And you got Reggie Jackson too on there, so
yeah, good point.
They need some shooting in there. And JJ definitely fits that bill, and the Clippers have good 2 guards there. You still have Jamal coming off your bench. You can supplement someone else there at the 2, and then they need a 3. They haven't had a 3 for a while. And it's just kind of that missing link on that team. That they just need a 3 who can spread that floor consistently. Jeff Green can be a little enigmatic, but he has improved.
Yeah, he's actually started the season pretty well. He has stints, though. That's the thing with Jeff Green is he has those, couple games where he looks like one of the top wings in the NBA, and you're like, wow, this guy's so good. And then the next game he puts up 7 and 2, and you're like, did he even eat his lunch today? Is he ready to play? It's
he kind of has that, it's just easy. He plays hard, but it doesn't. He's not an emotional guy at all, and it just comes across as, lackadaisical, and those nights where you play like shit, that's why. You got to find ways to get up every night, and sometimes Jeff Green doesn't do that.
Right.
Do you think any of that, though, has anything to do with Boston's, kind of like a little bit of an inconsistent rotation? I don't know as much this year, but in the past, last year, it was kind of hit or miss whether him, Solinger, Olnick, all those guys were going to get, run. They'd go some nights with 20 minutes, some nights with 38.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of that was affected that they weren't playing well. But as a player, it kind of makes me wonder, how much that has to do with some of Jeff Green's inconsistencies.
And it's a tough position, too. His small forward is really thin, so Jeff Green is much better than a lot of small forwards. And I'm pretty sure the Clippers have Matt Barnes right now starting, which, you don't mind him getting some minutes in the playoffs, but starting, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, he's not really hitting his shot currently, and without that, there's really not a lot he's bringing to the team. So that's why I feel that they desperately need a 3. I was going to say Wilson Chandler, but Bill Simmons actually had beat that. He put it on this podcast yesterday. So me and Chris actually talked about that about a week ago.
Yeah.
It's just a team, Denver, they need to shake it up.
Yeah,
they got some, they got some assets there. They don't, it's tough to be successful in those smaller markets, but
they have too much depth. You know what I mean? I've kind of hit on that last week that if you have 10 to 12 guys that can be in your starting lineup, that's not a good thing usually.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have that true top dog. Lawson, I think they kind of were hoping could end up being that. But having Chandler, Gallinari, McGee, Mozgov, all these guys, they have 2s of everything, and it just doesn't work in the NBA.
Totally. I've got a daily draft update here. Channing Frye alert. 24 fantasy points in the third quarter, 10 rebounds, 8 points, 2 steals, and a 3. He's kind of that guy who does a little bit of everything, from the power forward position, especially splashes threes.
And this is Channing Frye. We were just talking about this before the podcast. If you have a waiver spot, Channing Frye's out there, in top 3 waivers. Is he a guy that you would try and swoop up on?
Yeah, I like Frye too. I mean, every season he's kind of like we talked about with Mike Dunleavy. He seems to have this 2-3 week run where he puts up monster numbers. So the potential's definitely there. And now he's not fighting Markieff Morris or the Morris twins for playing time. So it's definitely a good spot for him.
Yep. He's the highest paid player on that team. He's the veteran. I think he's there to lead, and so I think he's going to get a lot of minutes, kind of teach the young bucks how to play ball. And yes, CH, I'm going to be using my number 2 waiver spot on Channing Frye, unless Rocky takes him, because Rocky's right ahead of me. But
no, you don't gotta
no, he's not. Rocky won't waste it.
So yeah, he fits my team really well. So I think and I have 3 waiver guys, so I'm going to make that 2 and keep it Channing.
Is that in Mike's league or your guys' other league?
That's Mike's league. I have I could use just a little bit of blocks to kind of push me over the edge, and then I need 3s desperately. So he's a nice out of position 3s guy.
Right.
I think Rory hit that last comment. I think Rory hit it on the head in your season-long leagues, whether it's roto or head-to-head. The fact that you can get 1, 2, 3s out of your power forward position is really big.
Huge.
Frye's unique that way. I mean, center spot, 3s and blocks. There's very few guys who can do that. Spencer Hawes was the guy last year who would do that for you. But if you can find those kind of guys, they're just so rare. And, like you said, Rory, he's a guy you're adding on top of, a lot of depth at that position. So he's just kind of putting you over the top.
Right, because I have Cousins, I've got Horford, I've got Drummond, I've got Tim Duncan. So I really have it locked down. I just need to add a little bit of flavor on top. You know what I'm saying?
So let's get into a team that's just been riddled with injuries right now. We got Russell Westbrook, no Durant, no Morrow. Looks like Perry Jones got hurt. Reggie Jackson's missed some games.
Roberson's
been down. In a tough Western Conference, are they, a lock to still get in? And if they do, what seed do you see them getting at?
They're going to be bottom of the heap at this point, I think. I think with Westbrook and Durant alone missing almost the first 2 months of the season, they're going to dig themselves a pretty big hole with the lineup they're running out right now.
And they're in games right now. They're 11, 12-point dogs.
Yeah.
And the last couple they haven't covered. I know the one TK got on, unfortunately, went the other way somehow. But I mean, this is a bad team.
Which one did you bet on, TK?
I took the Nuggets. The Nuggets. This was This was last Saturday. So yeah, I don't. A lot of it has to do with the Nugget. Brian Shaw needs to be fired.
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing out over there.
Brian Shaw is terrible.
Yep. He's definitely on the coach shit list of the ones we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, I think the thing for me that it kind of all these guys being down for the Thunder, what it's shown me is that Serge Ibaka as a player is overrated to me.
Mm-hmm.
He fits the Thunder well, having Durant and Westbrook in the lineup, and then when one of them goes down, he can kind of fill the second role. But there's no way he's a top-notch player. I mean, he's struggling. Last night he put up a little bit better line, but they're running out nobody with him, and he's still struggling to put up any sort of numbers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it too, to his credit a little bit, is that teams are totally keying in on him. They know he's just a mid-range jump shooter. They know he's not slashing. He doesn't really have a back-to-the-basket post-up game. And I think that's what limits him, whereas he's perfect for that lineup when you got two attackers then who can run the pick and roll with him. So I think, I think the thing about him too is unique, I guess, maybe in a bad way, is that no matter who's in the lineup with him, he's probably going to put up similar stats. He's probably going to put up 14 and 9, 13 and 8, really good, efficiency, a couple blocks. But even if he is the number one option, he's still probably going to give you maybe 16 points rather than that. He's just not that much of a scorer.
To me, though, it's really disappointing to see his rebounding numbers over the years. They've been pretty poor for a power forward center.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, right now, he can't be putting up 5 rebounds in games.
I agree with that.
He's too good of a player to be doing that. And so he's been disappointing to me this year. I thought, we talked on last podcast, that he was very worthy of a late first, early second pick because you could sell high on him. But at this point, he's not putting up any numbers to even sell high.
Yeah, I think there's a couple players who have, leapt past him as far as value, at least in the first couple weeks, like a Vucevic or a Marc Gasol. I'd much rather have those two guys over him right now.
Definitely. Mark is just putting on a clinic right now.
Yeah, Mark's balling.
This really is a team, too, in general, that's
Zebo, yeah.
Because I don't even know what their strategy, in terms of their personnel, it just makes that James Harden trade they did a couple years ago just stupid because when they moved that contract out, because of the fact that they didn't want to sign and go into luxury tax, well, they also haven't brought anybody in. When they got Kevin Martin back in that trade, they didn't keep him, which I'm not saying they should have, but they're not doing any moves to kind of, benefit from the fact that they let James Harden go, which, it's starting to catch up to them right now.
And it's
I think
really
they got a little too smart for themselves on that. I think they're kind of like the Patriots when they traded every single draft pick they had and just keep moving back years. And in 2019, they're going to have every draft pick in the draft. You hit a point where I think you kind of outsmart yourself, and I think they definitely did that with the Harden deal.
And it's kind of the crime, too, because we were just robbed of seeing Harden, Russell, and Durant.
Right, exactly.
That's just, so amazing to see, and you see Harden just blow up on his own right now. Injuries, and, just as a fan, you want to see them, beat the Heat or beat the Cavs, whatever, but now you're in a situation where the Thunder are probably not going to be in the playoffs.
The thing is, too, though, it's not like they haven't had any options. They could have amnestied Kendrick Perkins with that, but they refused to do it. So it's even if they would have kept Harden, signed him to that deal, they could have still done moves to still, not getting drilled by luxury tax. But that's why I'm saying when they traded him, I just don't understand their strategy of what they're trying to do. Especially, when Kevin Durant's contract comes up in a few years, it's looking like one of those spots. Why would you want to stay when you refuse to add any pieces?
I honestly think they underrated Harden. I don't think they knew what they had in him.
Yeah.
I don't think they realized how good he actually was.
I think it's a combination of all those things you guys are mentioning. And it kind of reminds me of the situation LeBron was in his first Cleveland run, where they think you're so good, and you can do it all so well yourself that all we have to do is just give you complementary pieces, and it's in this situation it's and that's why he left, because he felt and if you take LeBron out that team is so bad, and it's the same thing now as you're seeing without Westbrook and Durant. Those guys are so bad. There's no talent on that team. They're bereft of talent. They have no talent. And it sucks because, One thing that sucks too is that you couldn't really foresee the future with the cap raising and all that. Because now in hindsight, I read a lot of Zach Lowe articles, and he talks about with this cap raising, like they could have signed Harden to the max. And, while the other, Westbrook has a huge contract, Durant has a max contract, Ibaka has a big contract, and still max out Harden, and then you still have room, and you went over the cap like one time, 1 year. This year they would not have. So it's pretty shocking to hear that when you could have kept those 4 guys together and still put in just some minimum guys. And that's basically the talent they have on this roster is a bunch of minimum level guys.
Well, it'd be one thing if they would have made a decision to bring in bodies, along the way after trading him. That's one thing. But the fact that they traded him, they didn't even keep, the piece that they got for him. And so that's where I keep bringing up, where I'm questioning, what the direction of what they're doing is, because it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like Jeremy Lamb, I think they expected him to be something. It just seems like a lot of misevaluation. They didn't think Harden was that good. They thought Lamb was going to be great, but Lamb hasn't really proven anything yet.
He's coming back next week, I think. I actually picked him up in Mike's league because, it's one of those things. If he's ever going to do it, he's going to do it now.
Yeah, with all these players out.
Push him, and so I'm hoping he can have a solid start to the season when he gets healthy. Because, like I said, it's Reggie Jackson's going to be a great pickup for a lot of people this next month or so. But other than that, I don't know where they're going to get any buckets from.
Yep.
They lost to a bad Brooklyn team, pretty handily. And then, back it up and getting smacked by Toronto, too, which is a little better than Brooklyn. But I guess they're pretty similar in teams there.
But Brooklyn, me, you, and, our aunts and uncles could score on them, dude. Brooklyn is just bad defensively. They suck defensively if you watch them play. They can score a little bit. Joe Johnson and Darren Williams are filling it up. Mirza Teletovic is splashing threes. But other than that, those guys are just they play no D, 0 D.
Yeah, those veteran teams, they never want to guard anybody. Your D. Wills, your Joes, they want to get back in and get buckets on the other end and get you that way. And ISO Joe, hey, he's had a big game already this year. I think he hit close to a game win. I'm not quite sure who they were playing. But he backpacked them.
Yeah, he's had pretty good numbers.
He's another guy, one of those just 25 mil guys that just awful contract.
Yeah, that was a really bad contract.
Is there an out for Brooklyn? They just they stuck to where they're at?
They're just so handcuffed financially. So they just, because of the rules of the salary cap, they just can't. They'd have to match contract for contract.
Yeah, they're in a tough spot. They went and spent stupid money the last few years, and it just didn't make any sense, some of the stuff they're doing. I don't think there's any way out. The other thing is they never probably predicted D. Will would break down physically like he has, because he's just a completely different player than they traded for. And so I remember there are a lot of people who were pretty hard on the Jazz when they made that deal, but they're looking out okay. They look okay coming out of that deal now.
Yeah, because they got, Canner and
Derek
Favors for that? You take that all day. I don't like Canner. The Enes Kanter experience on my fantasy basketball team is over. He's off both my teams. I was hoping that he was going to carry something over from the preseason, but he's been a complete dud. And mainly due to minutes. They've been kind of going on a small lineup. I haven't really got a chance to watch them play, but I've been looking at the minutes, and a lot of their guards are playing really heavy minutes, and they're big rotation. I watched them a
couple nights ago against the Clippers, and Gordon Hayward looked great.
Yeah, him and Burks look awesome.
Yeah, and Trey Burke,
Sus.
He's not good.
So you think Exum ends up starting by the end of the season?
Ooh.
I don't know. Exum, he played some minutes in the Clippers game, and he was young. He looked young. I think he's got a lot of potential, but I don't know if the Jazz are going to pack it in and start him at the end of the year. I think they're going to try to stay competitive. They're giving him a lot of minutes off the bench, so that's a good thing. But Trey Burke, I think it's by next year, probably. End of next year, he will have lost his job to Exum.
Yeah, who he reminds me of is kind of like a Ramon Sessions. Doesn't have an extended three-point range. He can slash pretty well. His mid-range is decent, but a little undersized, a little skinny, not much of a playmaker, doesn't really see the floor great, you know. Definitely like an NBA player, but not, you know, the guy that I think they were expecting.
No, and I missed on that too because I actually thought he was going to have a pretty good career, Trey Burke. I kind of thought it maybe like a Lillard type in college, just watching him, but way off on
But wasn't
that
he
way.
player of the year?
He was, and he just had that knack for hitting big shots. Every time I watched a game, he was hitting a pull-up from like 28 feet to win the game or tie it. And so I just kind of felt like he had a little bit of Lillard in him. But just the athletic ability, the frame, Lillard's on a completely different level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually thought he was going to end up being a little bit like Kemba Walker for the same reasons, you know, taking big shots, that kind of thing. But, yeah, it definitely has just not worked out.
And, hey, you know, if you're the Jazz, I mean, that pick didn't work out, but you still got a lot of young talent over there. You got Exum coming in there. I mean, I like where the Jazz are sitting as far as one of the young teams coming up.
Yeah, I'm in the Jazz country, and I mean, they're in a tough spot, which it's just not a place that people want to live. NBA superstars want to come and live, and for what they're dealing with, they've got, you know, Hayward, Favors, and guys that legitimately want to live in Utah, it sounds like. So I think they've got a solid core of guys that would like to stick around Salt Lake City and build on that. So that's kind of, you know, as much as you could ask for being a Jazz fan.
Yeah.
So do you consider yourself a Jazz fan now?
Say what it
No,
says, right?
I do not consider myself a Jazz fan, and that probably got taken out of context. I was saying if you were a Jazz fan, that would be as much as you could ask for, because, you know, we get all the local stuff here, and, you know, D. Will, he never wanted to be here, really.
Right.
And so if he doesn't want to be there, it's kind of one of those things, you're renting a player for 3-4 years, whatever you sign him to, but there's no really hope for the future, whereas now they have that hope. Hayward fits the culture. He fits everything. He's a superstar down there in their eyes. And Favors is solid. He's definitely got to make a big step to hit the expectations that people had for him, but you combine that with you know, a young point guard that's up and coming, and they're not bad. It's kind of, to me, for them, it's a bright future.
The one game I did watch too is I noticed, I think was good for Hayward is Alec Burks. He was just doing a lot of slashing, like he just constantly slashing, and I kept seeing him, you know, doing the kickouts, and then Hayward's kind of, rather than like getting the double team and trying to do a pick and roll, he's like catching people off the bounce, you know. So I noticed that a lot, and he's like splashing his mid-range J. He's hitting his three. He looks really, really good. Him and all the young small forwards, I think, have looked good. Parsons has looked really good.
Right.
I'm forgetting who that third guy I was thinking of earlier today, but
Rudy Gay's played really well.
Rudy Gay's played really well.
And had a dud against Denver, but other than that, he's had really good lines.
Yeah, he had a 40-point game, and then he had like a high 20s game, and he was splashing his three, just playing really well. And like, he didn't look super selfish like he does sometimes. He looked like, you know, like he was playing some team ball, and him and Cousins had something going. And I think Collison, I mean, man, Collison has been like just shocking, like how well he's played, and at least in my opinion.
I've never been as big a fan as when he was when he had that big year with the Hornets. I didn't believe it because I saw him at UCLA and I was never like really impressed with him. But with that being said, like, I always thought people were a little bit hard on him over the last couple of years. Like, he didn't have bad seasons, he didn't have great seasons, but in both those years he was kind of in a timeshare that I don't necessarily know if those timeshares were because he wasn't playing great as much as both the point guards were pretty equal, and so they're kind of giving minutes both ways. I don't mind him.
Yeah, he's just a guy you've got to run a pick and roll with him in order for him to be effective. And that's kind of the problem. Like, when he went to Indy, is they did not run pick and roll. That's why, you know, he looked essentially lost. It kind of reminds me of like when Devin Harris was in Utah. You know, for the same reasons, it's like they bring in these guys, but you got to kind of structure your system, otherwise don't bring them in because they can only do specific systems.
Right.
That's a good point, TK, because Collison, you know, he's kind of a bouncy guy. He doesn't have like an amazing J, but he's got a good J. And then he can also get to the rim and finish pretty well. Yeah. And, you know, I think people give him a bad rap defensively, too. Like, I always hear people say he's not a good defender, but he seems like a bulldog every time I'm watching him play. Like, he's typically, like, in his you know, opposition's face is like up in their grill playing pretty solid D. He's a little undersized, but he's definitely like an upgrade as far as defensively.
He was
than
solid
Isaiah
last
Thomas.
year when CP3 went down again.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, it's
You know,
one of
Doc
those
Rivers
things
just
where
has a way with players, just
Yeah, he does.
most out of everybody, and I think he's a benefit of being a part of Chris Paul and Doc Rivers, and they would
Right.
put CP3 and Collison out there because Collison was playing well. So he's got so much speed, and he has much better defensively than what they had over there with Isaiah. And Isaiah can get buckets with anybody, but defensively, he wasn't really stopping anybody, and it's just more burden on Cousins and Rudy Gay, and they've been proving that they can handle it.
Well,
Unfortunately for them, McLemore looks awful
sucks.
still.
He sucks.
He's
And,
awful.
Stauskas surely isn't ready, and they really don't have another piece at all.
I mean, people were super critical of the Kings when they lost, or when they let Thomas go, excuse me. And I was one of those too, because he put up great numbers, but, after reading articles, Cousins was okay with him leaving. And
Yeah, exactly.
he was happy to have Collison come in. And you kind of look at, if they are going to have Cousins be the main man, he's really temperamental already, and then they have Rudy Gay on the wings. I don't know if having a shoot-first point guard is the best thing for the Kings. So looking back on it, I don't know that was the worst move, having Thomas leave and bringing Collison in. But they definitely got burnt in the press for doing it, that's for sure.
Yeah, I was definitely in the minority on that, and me and CH have talked numerous times about this, and I know I took a lot of flack for saying that I like them bringing Carlson and Sessions in over Isaiah, and it just has to do defensively. They're just such a better team defensively. And it's not that Isaiah didn't give effort, he's just undersized. That's really the only
Right.
thing.
Definitely.
Yeah,
That-
Isaiah's still played good too. Like to your point, I mean, I think he's still one of the favorites for Sixth Man of the Year. If he keeps dropping 20 off the
I
bench,
agree.
it's
Definitely.
like, that dude's going to be in the conversation. And I mean, he's already shown that he's going to hurt Dragic's value and Bledsoe's value. So
Yeah.
it's been pretty crazy, and even a little bit of
What-
Gerald Green too.
Bledsoe's last night was the first night, though, Bledsoe really took a hit on that. Before that, Bledsoe's been pretty solid. Dragic, to me, I haven't been on the Dragic bandwagon at all. I had him last year, and he was great for me. But
Right.
I had him and Bledsoe both because I got Bledsoe really late last year. And watching a lot of Suns game, which we kind of talked about League Pass, I've been watching a lot of Suns game this year and last year. When Bledsoe is healthy and right, and he's in the starting lineup, Dragic plays number 2 to Bledsoe. And so I think the one that's going to take the biggest hit in value is Dragic with Isaiah Thomas coming in. Bledsoe, I think, just because he's so versatile and he rebounds, he assists, he steals, he even has to block half the time,
Yeah.
that his value is going to be pretty solid this year. Dragic, though, I wouldn't touch.
Yep.
And you see, Dragic hasn't really hitting threes. He's not dropping dimes anymore. He's not getting steals. The ball's out of his hand a lot more. And, he's only in so much, and then you bring Isaiah right in. So not only is he not the main man anymore, he's not getting the minutes either.
I
think
just
you
noticed
hit
from
that
watching
on the...
is
Sorry, TK.
Oh, you're fine. I was just saying real quick, I just noticed it looks like Hornacek just plays the hot hand, and so since Isaiah Thomas, when he come in, is more than not going to have the hot hand over, like, say, a guy like Dragic, I think
Right.
that's really where it's going to hurt Dragic's minutes more than anything.
With Dragic, to me, he's like a little bit of Steve Nash in him in the sense that he pounds the ball for 20 seconds of the shot clock. And so when you have Bledsoe come in, run the point, or Isaiah Thomas run the point, that takes the ball out of his hands, and Dragic needs the ball and being able to, dribble around for 15 seconds, throw 3 pump fakes up, and then, hit a jump shot. And that's with the 2 other point guards on the roster, he just doesn't get the ball in his hands like that anymore.
Do you see Phoenix trying to make a move there? They're kind of another one of those teams, that's really deep too, and Hornacek does a much better job about getting his rotation in there. He's a much better coach than some of these other teams have. But do you see Phoenix trying to make a deal to be a factor? Because they don't necessarily, are looking to tank. They got some assets there, but they definitely have some holes too. But they got a lot of depth at the wing.
They do.
It seems like JaVale McGee would actually be a good fit there, because then he could split time with Alex Lynn. That just seems to be – they need like a center that can play about 20, 25 minutes.
Well,
Yeah.
they have the Plumlee brothers still too. Miles Plum, the Plum Dog.
Yeah.
Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah,
So
Plum Dog Millionaire.
might as well, like, if you're only going to play him 20, you might as well go and get JaVale McGee, let him play 20. At least he can protect the rim. and he'll run up and down the floor with these guys. So
yeah, definitely. He would
think about
go great the way they like to play. They like to run up and down. And so TK, you're saying JaVale McGee's first one out on Denver?
I think so, just because of what they're paying him, and they're only going to let him play 20 minutes off the bench. You might as well move him, and even if you just give him away, at least you're not paying. You know, you could apply that money elsewhere, which is what a team like them needs to do because they're so deep everywhere.
So do you see Phoenix kind of jumping in there, you know, sneaking into a playoff, or are they still kind of on the outside looking in?
I think they have a shot this year with, OKC, definitely, the way they're getting hit with the injury bug. That helps their cause. With the Phoenix, I don't know. We kind of talked with Denver and having the, too deep everywhere and 10 starters or 10 guys that could start. I just kind of see the peak being Denver from a few years ago, where they sneak or they get in the playoffs and maybe win a series, but I just don't see them. I'm not a big fan of Phoenix. They're young, they're exciting, but as a team, I just don't like what they're doing.
Yeah. The Morris brothers have been impressive. Marcus has been a little inconsistent, but Markieff has pretty much done his thing every game. They're pretty, and they're like you said, they're fun to watch. They got Markieff like playing the center sometimes, and he's like, on paper he's 6'10", but he doesn't look like he's over 6'8", 6'9".
Right.
And he's he's more of a wing and a slasher. And even sometimes he's almost a pass-first player. He's an interesting guy. But like the thing about adding Isaiah Thomas with those guys is, I always ask yourself, like, are you like addition by subtraction or subtraction by addition? And it's like you add Isaiah and he's playing really good, but then now you got Dragic who's not playing as good, and so I feel like whether you trade somebody and bring in like an amazing JaVale McGee or whoever it is, like I feel like they got to trade somebody sooner or later, just because I hate to see when there's like three really, really good players on the same team, they're just like kind of like fighting each other and as far as minutes wise and just like hurting each other's game. The one guy who's not going to suffer though is Isaiah, obviously, because it looks like he just comes in and does his thing, doesn't matter where he plays.
The way I kind of look at it is it's kind of a smart money move by them bringing Isaiah Thomas, because if you think about it, like we brought up for the reasons with Dragic, he's the one in the contract year, and now it's making it so instead of, if he puts up a season like he did last year where he's, going to be looking at like Bledsoe money, now you're not going to necessarily have to pay anywhere near that because of the numbers that he's going to put up this year.
No, that's a good point. And Isaiah Thomas's contract is very affordable. It's a great contract. But, I feel like Dragic is probably the best player out of all three of those guys, in my opinion. And it sucks that just the way he plays as an unselfish player and not really an off-the-ball guy, that he seems to be struggling the most.
Yeah, I think Phoenix, I don't know. I think they're happy with that three-guard lineup, but they're definitely a team that has, it makes sense for them to make a deal, that's for sure.
Well, and Bledsoe has never proven to stay healthy either, so
that's true.
Next thing, one person gets hurt, and they're like, thank God we have 3 point guards, so we're talking like we know everything, and it's like just the first week of fantasy, first week of NBA, like Dragic's just going to fall off planet Earth, and then he may turn it around, who knows.
But he'll give you some sleepless nights, because I had him.
Because you had a couple already, CH? Oh, man, that was.
All right, let's get into the Windover edition of the podcast. On Saturday, where a few of us are going to be sneaking out to our local casino and going to try and do some work on some NBA. And we're going to pick a few games, and obviously we don't know what the spreads are, but we're just going to pick a few games and kind of see what we think here.
Okay.
At 1:30 on Saturday, we have an early morning tip-off. Portland at the Clippers. And I'm guessing Portland would get a few points there. It won't be too much, though.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So
Clippers haven't been playing great yet.
Is it in LA or in Portland? Sorry.
It's in LA early. I think the last early game the Clippers lost, but I could be wrong on that one.
Yeah, early games are weird. I'm not sure why they do those, especially on the West Coast. I'll take LA by 3.
I like that. I think that's kind of where it's going to be at, but I think I'll take the underdog there getting points. Clippers just haven't really clicked yet. Obviously, they could easily click there, but, Blake's doing a ton of scoring there. But other than that, it's been pretty inconsistent. Jamal's still been playing well, obviously, and JJ can easily find a stroke. He's a great shooter, but, they still have holes scoring sometimes. And if Portland's getting a decent amount of points, I probably would take that.
Yeah, I
agree.
think it. Oh, go ahead, Rocky.
Oh, I agree. I think, like I said, I think a little bit has to do with Portland's the Clippers aren't playing well right now. They're not playing bad, but they haven't hit their peak yet. That's young season. And Portland, they always start strong.
I'm actually going to go the other side. I'm going to take the Clippers here. I kind of like this matchup. Like, for instance, I know we brought up Matt Barnes early in the podcast, how a place like that hurts him. But in a matchup like this, it's really not going to hurt him having to guard a guy like Batum since he never demands the ball and he never really looks for his own shot. Mm-hmm. So I think they can get away with a guy like Matt Barnes out there. And really everywhere else, like Lillard, Chris Paul is a wash. Aldridge, Blake Griffin are pretty much a wash. So I guess it comes down, the way I look at it is if Jamal Crawford can come and have a big game, he's going to outscore anyone that the Portland Trailblazers can bring off the bench. So
definitely
in a home game, I like the Clippers in this one.
Yeah, and I think to Rocky's credit, last week calling Blake an MVP candidate. He looks amazing. Like, I watched him play a couple times because I was playing CH last week and he had CH, and so I'm sitting there just rooting against him. But Blake Griffin, man, he is balling, dude. Like, he looks great. He's hit a couple 3 balls. He is just relentlessly attacking. Like, he has that look of like an MVP kind of player, like where he's just like not phased. He's just like scoring. He's rebounding. If he misses, if his misses and his makes, he just looks the same constantly. Like, he's really got a good mentality at this point. So it's been kind of cool to see. And DeAndre hasn't played as good. Chris Paul's played really good, but I think once their team catches up a little bit and they start finding their rhythm, they'll be one of the best teams in the NBA. Yeah,
I actually to hit on Blake and daily fantasy, I added them to my tournament team tonight. They're playing the Golden State Warriors, and I don't know if you guys remember last year, the whole Blake getting tossed out of the game, and there's been bad blood between those guys. So I'm really
nice rivalry over there.
Yeah, I'm really pumped about watching the game tonight, and I just think Blake's going to have a huge game tonight. That's my hope, at least.
Mm-hmm. Me too. Let's get into our next game. We got the Washington Bullets at Indianapolis.
Washington Bullets.
And Indy's pretty bad.
Indianapolis is really, really bad. I watched him a few times. I mean, and Donald Sloan is a serviceable player, but if he's playing 40 minutes for you, you have trouble. I watched CJ Miles struggle. Their whole lineup is just really, really gross. So I'm gonna bet against them in almost every situation. I mean, how far of an underdog are they gonna be, you think?
7-ish?
Yeah.
Does that sound about right?
I think this is a game that you'd have to keep an eye on if, like, George Hill or David West kind of enter the lineup. That's just going to be something to keep an eye on. I mean, I don't think either of them will be ready, but that's really how you got to look at a game like this. They're actually playing tonight. It's a 2-point game, so it seemed like a match that I thought that they'd be able to exploit because of all these injuries, but apparently that doesn't seem to be the case. It looks like
What's John Wall's line look like tonight?
12
points. 12 points, 3 assists, a steal, a block, 2 boards, 3 of 3 at the line with the tray.
Yeah, he's balling. And it's only the second quarter.
Sloan's having trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a bad matchup. That's why I had him in my the 50-50 league.
I did too.
You guys is just a bad matchup for Donald Sloan. It's going to be a tough day at the office today for him.
He's hanging in there, though. He's got 11 points, 3 boards, 2 assists.
Hey, Donald Sloan, you can't ask for anything more than that from him.
Really
to be honest with you, he's priced. They've upped his price to $6,000 on DraftKings, and I think he's worth every penny of it because, again, he's getting 38 minutes on an NBA team, and it just you have to get up and put up numbers.
He's actually a really big, strong guy. Like, if you look at him, he looks like a running back. He is a beast.
I think at A&M, Texas A&M is where he played, if I remember right. And I remember watching college games where it seemed like they almost used him as a 2-guard, and his job was to get buckets in that system.
Yeah. Indiana.
Yes. CJ Miles, he's 0 for 6 tonight. So.
CJ just getting his chuck on.
0 for his last 14 shots, and that's the type of player he is. And the next week you'll pick him up and he'll drop 7 trays. And
that's the thing, though, that to hit on Chris's topic that scares me about playing the Wizards or the Pacers is you look at Miles and you look at Copeland. Those two could single-handedly, kind of we talked about with Nick Young.
He torch you.
Oh man,
Mhm.
I mean Chris
God.
Copeland. I've actually watched too many Pacers games this year because I've rostered Chris Copeland and Donald Sloan a lot, and I mean the ball isn't in his hands for half a second before he shoots it,
Right.
and the guy can stroke it. So he could definitely catch a hot streak, get 20 plus, along with C.J. Miles too.
Mhm. Mhm.
So maybe take the points in that game then. I mean, they're definitely going to be getting points there. You'd think. I guess it may
It
depend
depends
how
on
this
how-
matchup
yeah.
goes tonight too. I know some of that will definitely make it.
Yeah, because I think a lot of that kind of thing is when if it hits 9 points, 10 points, if it hits in that area,
Gotta take
and it
it.
turns into a garbage point type thing. Chris Copeland is like the kind of player that's kind of the king of the garbage time.
Yeah, he is.
All right, let's get into our next game. We got Memphis at Milwaukee, and right now Milwaukee's up 5 against Chicago. It's late in the second quarter, but they've shown tough. They've they should have beat the Hornets. And they played well against the other teams. They definitely had one of those teams that have too much depth, but Brandon Knight's been great, and they're a team that can score. So a team like Memphis who really can't score, but if you get in their style of game, they can be a serious problem. But I'm guessing Milwaukee should be getting some points here, and I kind of like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if Milwaukee gets 3-4 points, you might want to think about picking them. The one thing about Memphis is they play really, really good D, and on a system like Milwaukee's, where it's Jason Kidd and he's new, and they don't really even have a system. I think that Memphis could cause some trouble for them scoring the ball. But that said, on the flip side of the coin, Memphis isn't really scoring a ton either. Mike Conley's numbers are a little bit down, but Zebo and Mark are balling out. But I expected Poindexter and Vince Carter to play a little better than they have. Tony Allen's played pretty well, but and I know they lost Courtney Lee to a head injury. But I'll probably take Memphis in this one, just because I don't think the spread would be that big since they're on the road, and I think they're going to have a really tough time scoring against Memphis.
I like Memphis, but Milwaukee is one of the teams that tanked last year that I feel like this year they have a game plan. They got Jabari, and I think they're trending upwards, whereas the Sixers and some of these teams aren't. Brandon Knight's been
Amazing.
I've never been a fan at all, but he's definitely changing my opinion of him.
Yeah.
And then Jabari, he hasn't started that well this season, which kind of surprised me. But once he gets comfortable, I expect him to be a great player. So
Patrick Patterson alert. He's hit 3 threes. Patrick Patterson, 11 points, 3 rebounds, 3 threes, 2 assists, a block, and a steal. So how about that, Patrick?
Great. That is great.
Yeah, for like 3K or whatever the hell we got him.
Yeah, totally.
For 3,500, yeah.
Yeah, and he's got 22.75 fantasy points right now. So good on you, Patrick.
Yeah.
What about you, TK? Who you like in this one?
I think, like, we vaguely brought this game up earlier. I really feel if Sanders can stay out of foul trouble and he can just contain Gasol, I feel they have enough gunners to be able to outscore Memphis. I know we brought up, like Rory did, about how good defensively Memphis is, which I completely agree. The thing where I think they could catch up in this game is when, it gets to the point where both second units come in, and I think that's where they could exploit them. They got guys like Jared Bayless, O.J. Mayo, some guys who get hot. And so if they can win the second unit battle, I really feel that they could pull this out. So I actually like Milwaukee.
That's a good point, TK, about the bench, because Giannis, right? They're bringing him off the bench too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they do have a deep bench. As CH mentioned, that can hurt you. In a game like this where Memphis is really thin, they might be able to outscore the bench by quite a bit. But when it comes down, it's the third and fourth quarter, and they got that half-court offense going, and they just dump it down to Zebo in the paint, or they give it to Mark at the top of the key, or on the elbow. Like those guys go to work, especially when you're in a slow-down game.
This would be a game I would play Sanders and Henson together, and I would stick Henson on Zebo, when it gets to the end of this game. And I actually saw the last game, he DMP'd Henson. He refuses to play him, but he's going to, give Zaza Pachulia, 25 minutes. That seems to make like a lot of sense.
No sense. Henson, another guy who could be a huge asset if he gets traded somewhere.
Yeah. If Henson got traded to a team that needed this, like a PF that would give you 30 minutes a night, he would be. I mean, he'd be one of the top fantasy players, because every time he gets minutes, his numbers are pretty crazy.
They should send his ass to Phoenix. Hell, he could give them 20 minutes at the center spot.
Doesn't he have foul trouble problems, though? Isn't that one of his deals?
I mean, yeah, like he is undersized for the center spot, but if they're only going to play their centers, 20, 25 minutes, I don't see why he couldn't handle that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge upgrade from, Plum Dog. Well, let's get into our next game. We're going to have a shootout. Golden State at Houston.
Golden State, Houston.
Curious to see what the over is on this one. It's going to be at
Where's
Houston.
that at?
It's going to be at Houston.
H-Town.
I'll take Houston just because it's at home. That'll be a good game, though.
I'll take the Warriors. If Klay Thompson can get aggressive and get Trevor Reason to foul trouble, I think that would really be the key that you're kind of banking on. So I'll take the Warriors to win on the road.
I'm going to take Golden State as well. I know Houston's undefeated, but they've played a bunch of fake NBA teams like the Lakers and the Celtics and the Sixers. So I'm going to go with Golden State just because I don't really have a great reason.
And, I'm going to go with Houston at home. Maybe Dwight can get it going. They're going to have to get Bogut off the court, though, for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, can they contain Klay? And, Steph Curry's going to be a problem there. Hopefully, Beverly can be able to play that game because they're going to need him for that matchup. If there's no Beverly, Steph Curry's going to go just berserk.
Yeah.
I think, though, Beverly does pose a pretty tough matchup for any point guard.
Yeah.
Really, and so that's one thing they have going for them, is that I think Beverly can match up with Steph pretty well, and at least force him to make tough shots, which Steph is very capable of. But Beverly, he's just a nuisance on the defensive end.
Beverly
I think,
is
too,
amazing.
it's like Klay Thompson is the one that's going to dictate that game because not only does he have to get a Reason foul trouble, he's got to stay out of foul trouble from James Harden. So I think he's going to be the one that's going to control the win-loss in that game.
And Klay's looking like an all-star right now. I mean, he's just playing great, right? He's getting to the free throw line. He's just red hot right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But, yeah, I would definitely put him on Ariza defensively, being Klay Thompson, and put Harrison Barnes on Harden just for the fear of, him picking up 2 quick fouls.
Mm-hmm.
At least then you could bring in Iguodala, and, he should be able to hold his own.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right, and to wrap up our podcast, we're going to do one more. We got the Pelicans at the Spurs.
I mean, is the line at 15, or where's the line?
I mean, I'm guessing the Pelicans are going to be getting a few, not much.
Yeah. I mean, Anthony Davis has looked unbelievable. I mean, did you guys see that first game where he almost had triple-double with blocks? Like, some of the dunks that he
I know
gets
Rocky
and the
watched
putbacks.
it. I know that.
Oh, yeah, I don't think you checked the score there, Rock. Yeah. But no.
How many
dude,
Pelican games do you watch,
oh,
Rocky?
my God.
I watched a lot. I mean, having Davis in a keep league is just fan. And I got roasted when I took him in the second round a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, his potential, to me, honestly, it may sound crazy, and injuries aside, which is the biggest thing in fantasy, his potential might be bigger than KD's.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys think they have the right coach there? Because I don't think the right coach is with this personnel that they have. I feel he's not maximizing how good they can be offensively since he's a defensive coach. So I think that needs to be a change that they need to strongly consider.
I agree. I think to me, I don't know why they're not a little bit more up-tempo considering who they've got on their team. Encouraging sign for me is that they're letting Tyreek do his thing this year.
They are.
Which is awesome because I think at the small forward spot he can cause a lot of matchup problems, and then you have Drew Holiday and Eric Gordon's a great spot-up shooter. They have the pieces to be good. I think Omer is going to be a big addition to that team to help protect the rim and rebound.
Mm-hmm.
Because as many block shots as Unibrow's had, they've been really poor defensively.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Omer's going to help him out with that. The big deal is what kind of leadership do they have, really?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Monty Williams is going to be the coach of the year. So, and I'm completely,
you like Monty to keep his job,
being not honest. Like, no, Monty Williams is like he's on that USA staff. Isn't he on that staff with like Thibodeau and Coach K?
Somehow he conned his way on.
Yeah,
that
it's
staff.
like, is that old time boys or is he actually a good coach? I don't know yet.
I think he can be an okay coach with the right team. I just think with this team specifically, he's not the right coach for them.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? They need someone who's a little more flavorful on the offensive end?
I think so because I think they're good enough defensively that they don't necessarily need a defensive coach because you got Ashik
Are
and
you
Davis.
calling for Mike D'Antoni?
I don't know if I'm going to go quite there, but
Mike Brown? Let's just bring
really
back
quite
any of the
sure.
Lakers coaches.
I'd have to think about it for a sec on who would be the right fit for them, but I just don't think that with the personnel that they have that you need just a standard, just defensive-minded coach. I think that they could get away with just a guy, even if he was just offensive-only coach, that type, like say your D'Antoni's of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can maximize the penetration that you have between Tyreek, Drew Holiday, and Eric Gordon. And I've watched all their games, and a lot of the times they're just dumping it down to Ashik and say, get us a bucket, and it's just horrible to watch. It's like you have these three guards that can just get him a layup or a dunk, and they're not even doing that. So that's why I feel that the right coach isn't there.
So do you see San Antonio running away with this one?
No, that's tough. I don't see him running away with it. I think they're going to have to get some production out of their bench. I think Ryan Anderson's going to have a monster game, which I think he could versus the Spurs with the type of bigs that are going to come off their bench. But I could see them getting in foul trouble, say Drew Holiday from Tony Parker. I could see him picking up 2 quick ones. So I think it will just kind of depend how many points can they get.
Exactly. I mean, if it's like 7 or 8, that's kind of the line there for me. I take San Antonio almost every time unless it starts to get to those like high single digits, double digits spread. But San Antonio, I mean, Kawhi is just coming back. I think Thiago Splitter's coming back tonight. So I think they're starting to get healthy, and I think we all know what San Antonio can do. So I'll take San Antonio in this one.
For all we know, Pop could sit everybody.
Yep.
And they'd still win.
Mm-hmm.
I know. It's just sick.
Yeah, I don't know. That to me, that's a tough one too. It's hard to say, depending on how big the line is. But the Spurs are definitely going to win the game. It's just a matter of how much, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like we got ourselves an 8-team parlay here going on. We're just going to do straight up games. We've talked it all out. Let's do this.
Put your bets down.
All right, guys. Is there anything else you guys want to end with today?
Only thing I'd add is who you guys got for like so far the early season like fantasy out of nowhere guy for you guys.
I don't want to tell you my secrets. No, I'm just kidding. It's pretty.
No, I'm
obvious
saying
right
like the guy that maybe went undrafted or late rounds that so far has put up numbers that are just, kind of like the Darrell Wright so far of a couple years ago.
For my team, it's been Alec Burks.
Yeah.
I had a lot of confidence in him, and with the minutes he was.
You're welcome, by the way.
Yeah, you dropped him for some reason, and then.
Sometimes I do dumb shit like that.
But no, for him, he's been my revelation because on one of my teams I only have Kobe Bryant as a 2-guard,
Right.
And then so he's been a great backup 2-guard, and then on my other team I had a Westbrook injury. Bradley Beal is already injured, and so he's been my starting 2-guard there as well with Jamal Crawford. So
Right.
he's been a nice 16, 17 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and I think he's missed 1 free throw all year, and he's gone 7 times a game. So he's shooting just a great FT clip, which is pretty much exactly what I was hoping he was going to do. So he's been that for my team. I don't know about you guys though.
I'm kind of hoping my guy becomes Ed Davis. I kind of picked up on it early right after the injury. My center situation is a serious problem, and he's just the kind of guy I'm hoping at the end of the year ends up getting a lot of minutes there. So hoping, he's owned in 8% maybe. So, I could easily drop him tomorrow after I say this, but right now I would say hoping that it's Ed Davis.
To me, it's, not just on my team, just in general. I was kind of looking Tony Roten.
Yeah, Tony Roten.
Look at his line tonight again, 27 points, 3 rebounds, 8 assists. And I know that's contingent on Michael Carter Williams and everything like that, but his numbers have been off the charts, and I think he's going to find a way to get enough time at the 2-guard or backup point guard when Carter Williams gets back to still be really effective. Again, playing in a Sixers system that's complete garbage time all game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the thing about Roten, CH and I talked about this earlier, is that his turnovers and percentages are some of the worst in the NBA,
Right.
And especially with his usage rate, it's out of control right now. So
Right.
he's getting 6 turnovers a game and missing 5 free throws in games, and it's been pretty crazy. But his numbers, I mean, I was telling CH too, he reminds me like a James Harden who can't shoot, because like he can just slash at will, like, and he's getting
he
dunks.
reminds me more of Vermont Sessions, honestly. That's kind of who I see him more of. But I get what you're saying though with Harden.
Just a relentless slashing, you know, just like constantly. Like, and then he goes to the line like 9-10 times a game too. It's like this guy is pretty freaking good. And I think
he's athletic.
He's so athletic. And then when NCW comes back, I think he just slides over to the 2. And then it's like, then you're running this kind of...
problem with that is who's hitting a 3 on that? I mean, neither one of those guys are good shooters.
Roten's not a good shooter, don't get me wrong,
terrible.
but he is hitting some threes this year, which, from a fantasy perspective, ups his value a lot.
Just kind of based off volume, just, you know, having
the
an
Sixers
opportunity
system
to do
in general,
it.
I mean, it's just... There's no bad shot for their team. I mean, it's
and
just,
they're only down 2 tonight. They may be looking at a win tonight.
One more than the Lakers have.
Yeah, I mean, it's... you take Kobe off the Lakers, and I mean,
Oh, my gosh.
I think the
Seriously.
Sixers are more talented than the Lakers
Easy.
outside of that.
Oh, yeah. You know who's been a huge disappointment on the other side of that coin, for me, has been... I don't want to say huge disappointment, but a kind of a disappointment with his FG so far is Drummond. Drummond hasn't really scored, hasn't had a big game yet, and I was kind of expecting Van Gundy to like immediately affect that, and I think it will happen with over time. And, you know, someone else on his team too is like who I'm really worried about is Jennings. We mentioned this earlier, but Jennings is just like, I mean, considering he's like a 5th, 6th round value guy, he's looking really scary right now.
Jennings, to me, he's the rest of the year, I think his value is just going to be down. Drummond, I'm okay with him. I watched him play the Timberwolves the other night, and he's got a nice little lefty hook, righty hook, and, you know, they rimmed out on him. I think it's just a matter of time before he
Totally
picks it up.
What about you, TK? Who's your player?
Like in terms of where you drafted him, or
Just
So more of the
either
like
way.
waiver guy who you
Yeah.
didn't think was going to be who they are.
man, that's tough. I'm trying to think of the top of my head. Yeah, there's no one that I can like just think of that I feel even if they have got off to a good start, it's going to sustain it. I know natural guys that come to mind that have started out quick. Like Brandon Knight seems to be a guy that comes to mind.
Yeah, he's
Came out.
really
Right, that's a
surprising.
good one.
Collison's been
Trevor
surprising.
Ariza has been shooting the hell of the ball.
I mean, Brandon Knight, if you were in a redraft right now, I mean, my
Jeez.
God.
Yeah.
He's just been playing great.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can't think of anyone like as far as a free agent that I feel is just going to sustain it. I know the Tony Roten one he said is a pretty decent one.
Yeah.
Even if he backs up Michael Carter Williams, they're going to be getting blown out so much that he'll be in there enough to make it where he's going to have a lot of value.
The one guy that I picked up off the waiver and I've kept and gonna keep is MKG. So I guess you could throw him in there too, because I definitely plan on keeping him as long as he comes back in a timely fashion. Which I can't really say that about anybody else I've picked up except for maybe Alec Burks, but that was before the season started. So you know who's been surprising and you might not even think of his name is Garrett Temple for Washington. Yeah. He's put up like great numbers and he already has 3 threes at the half tonight. And in 4 of the 5 games, he scored double figures. He shoots good percentages. He hits threes and gets steals. I think he'll hold down that spot until Bradley Beal gets back.
Yeah,
They're
I
up
think
5 right now, too.
Against Indy.
Halftime, you can maybe look for a big second half from Washington and blow this one wide open.
There's really should be no reason why this game's even...
Copeland, baby.
Copeland!
I'm telling you, that dude has got no conscience. That he just shoots. That's his whole objective is to shoot the ball.
Yeah.
So
outside shot to win most rebounds at the end of the year has the most rebounds. Lance Stevenson, like this guy rebounds like crazy. I know he can't shoot, but man, he's averaging 9 rebounds a game. He has 12 tonight.
yeah, I mean to me, I've got him on one of my squads and he's struggled. His field goal percentage is pretty horrible to look at, but he's helping so much in other areas that I can't complain too much. But the field goal percentage is pretty brutal right now.
CH, who's your guy, CH?
Oh, I picked Ed Davis.
That's right, Ed Davis.
I picked Ed Davis, and then I also have MKG in the league as well, and pretty thin at that spot, so I was definitely looking at that position pretty hard.
What about the other way? Like, who's been a disappointment for you?
disappointment would be Dragic. Dragic was definitely a disappointment. Just was expecting them to just kind of, pick up right where they left off. And I know they brought Isaiah in there, but, you watch him play, and he's just not hitting threes. He's not really doing anything besides scoring 10 points a night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, considering he was a unanimous second, third rounder.
Seems like Paul Millsap's kind of got off to a slow start, too.
Yep.
I don't anticipate that it will sustain, but that'd probably be a guy that naturally comes to mind and it's gotten off to a slow start.
Lawson's had a slow start as well. Really, anyone on the Denver Nuggets looks pretty bad right now.
Right.
But hopefully they can turn that around, and, they got the talent there, but I don't know what they're doing in the half court. It looks just awful.
Right.
Lawson started out really slow last year, too. Dragic to me wasn't I just wasn't high on him to begin with the addition of Isaiah and Bledsoe being healthy. I don't know. To me, I'm nervous. I drafted Kyrie, and I'm nervous about that. I know that.
I got him in the keeper. I'm just sweating it.
Yeah, just watching him. Even Love, I didn't realize, and I should have been smarter after watching Chris Bosh and everything, is I didn't realize the impact LeBron was going to have negatively on those guys. And right now, I'm just sweating bullets with the Kyrie draft pick.
What are his numbers right now?
They're not terrible. I don't have the computer by me where I'd look, but they're not. He's had, the thing is, it's going to be an inconsistency thing. I think he's had a big game or two, but then he's had a couple pretty poor games, and I just kind of think that's how it's going to be for him and Love from here on out, is a big game here, a big game there, and a dud. So
definitely, I agree. And, even for LeBron, I mean, let's talk about maybe one of the worst years to have the one pick. You think Durant all day, and then you're backed in, and Anthony Davis just is a clear number one pick, maybe from here on out.
Well, I think you can make a case for Harden too. Harden's numbers are ridiculous.
Yeah, Harden just gets it done.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised at how far Harden dropped.
Yeah, I mean,
he's a guy who just continues to backpack me in my keeper leagues. No matter how many mistakes I make, Harden just bails me out.
Right. Yeah, I think to me it just, I don't know, the Harden thing. I got our league, I drafted Harden and then got Kyrie at the end of round 2. The fact that I got Kyrie at the end of round 2 makes me feel a little bit better about myself, but Harden, I was surprised that he went. Like, he was dropping in our league, and then some of the mocks I looked at, he was going as low as like 9 and 10.
I don't understand that at all.
It makes no sense.
I don't get it either, why people were so down on him, because if anything, he was going to have a bigger year than the year before.
Yep.
I know he had a few nagging injuries last year that might have bothered some owners, but I mean, the lines he's putting up right now are just insane. He's flirting with a triple-double almost every game.
Well, guys, I guess we're going to wrap this thing up, huh?
Better wrap this up. Great second episode. Look forward to the next, and hopefully we clean up in Wendover.
Can't wait.
Have fun, guys.